Hey, Seattle hockey fans. Last time our team hit the ice, not necessarily the result that we wanted against the Calgary Flames. We're not actually going to get into that too much, but we're going to talk to the amazing Alison Lukan about how the Kraken have fared so far. Is it time to change things up in the lineup? And much more coming up on this Monday episode of Locked On Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are the Seattle Kraken.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and you can get up to $20 off your first purchase when you use promo code Locked On NHL. Today, we have a special guest, someone that you know and love just as much as I do. That is the one and only Alison Lukan. And so I'm going to ask her a little bit about the new NHL EDGE data. We also had some of our Kraken Insiders send questions through the Subtext app, and I was able to ask Alison those questions. Here's the first part of our conversation with Alison Lukan. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken. To our everydayers and OGers, this person on the screen with me needs no introduction, but we're going to do so anyway. Alison Lukan, a data-driven storyteller, not just for hockey, but specifically for our hockey team, the Seattle Kraken, a writer, and most recently seen between the benches on Root Sports. Alison, how are you today?
I am better now that I'm talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you. We know you are completely busy with the Seattle Kraken, so always a pleasure to have you on. But when we saw there was some new data that the NHL is playing around with, we knew we wanted to have you on the show. So we're going to get into NHL EDGE a little bit, but first let's talk about the Seattle Kraken. We're through a month and a few days now, getting ready to go on another road trip for the team. What are some of the things that have stood out to you about the season 3 look for the Seattle Kraken?
Yeah, I think, what's most important is that going into, this was yesterday's game against Calgary, the team is really just 2 points off where they were at this time last year in terms of number of games. So I know it was rough and some people didn't know how to interpret wins versus losses, but I don't think there's any reason to panic. And I think that if you look at the caliber of the teams that the Kraken had to play, that was brutal. So to come away like they did, and I also think to see the signs of improvement that we've seen, to see a player like Oliver Bjorkstrand hitting the ground running, to see the power play clicking, to see passing getting better, to see the rush attack kind of starting to come back, to see the ability to win puck battles starting to come back, to see goaltending starting so strong with both of those players, I think are all really positive signs. Of course, the loss against Calgary is not what you want to see, particularly against a divisional opponent. But if the Kraken can rebound from that and learn and improve, then hopefully this just becomes one of those losses you wish you didn't have, but it wasn't something that broke the ship down.
Yeah, I think there are so many things that you said that absolutely. The Calgary loss was a tough one to swallow. You wanted more from the team. And I think that's been one of the things that we've noticed. I agree with you. I don't want to be alarmist, but it's definitely been noticeable that keeping leads has been a little bit
very
tough
true
for the Seattle Kraken. And but I want to go back to something that you said about goaltending, because I know just in passing, being at training camp and preseason, we talked about goaltending, and I have told you, Locked On listeners are very familiar. I was very intrigued about what the competition coming into training camp would be at the goaltending position, just given the way things have gone, it's been a little bit of a bugaboo for us, and not in a way necessarily where I thought that any given goaltender at any given time was underperforming per se, but it was just a mix of things that seemed a little odd, and particularly for Philip Grubauer, it's always been tough for me to kind of put a finger on the pulse of how he is kind of gelling and feeling behind the Seattle Kraken team. So we have Philip Grubauer, obviously, and then it's Joey Daccord, who came in this season with Chris Driedger going to the Coachella Valley Firebirds. From your perspective, what would you say are the differences and similarities when you have Grubauer and Joey Daccord in net for Seattle?
Yeah, and I think this is interesting. Yesterday, before the Calgary game, Dave Haxtell was asked. Dave Haxtell has made the decision and made it clear to us that he will not be giving us lineup decisions before games, as is his right. Yes. But when asked about it again yesterday, he made it clear that for the goaltenders specifically, it's because they have two different styles that could be viewed as an advantage depending on the opponent, that he's not going to disclose that. So I think what's first and foremost most important to realize about Philip Grubauer, well, at goalies in general, let's start there. Never look at win-loss records because, that's not fair. And, if you look at Philip Grubauer's underlying numbers historically last year and this, that is the goaltender who's going to get the harder competition. That is the goaltender who's going to face the tougher games.
Right.
And if he plays phenomenally, which he actually has done, particularly when he faces 30 shots or more, he likes those volumes. He is going to exceed expectations. He has 3 quality starts already, and that's outstanding. So he is going to face tougher competition, but be really, really sound. And as we have seen, even last night, arguably against the Flames, big key saves in key times. He just needs his team to score in front of him as well.
Right.
What Joey Daccord brings is he brings that ability to move the puck. He brings that ability to be a third defender back there, aid in the breakout, aid in a more speed-focused attack, which can be very valuable based on your opponent. And again, you don't necessarily always want or need that. So don't think it's a better or worse situation. Right. But we also have seen, and this is normal for any player coming to the NHL on a more full-time basis, he's going to have some learning lessons around that. We saw that in Florida. He played a magnificent game, but makes a decision and then the puck takes a wonky bounce. Maybe his risk assessment was too generous in that moment. I'm not saying one negative thing about him at all, but that ends up being a turning point in the game. So you've got seniority and ability to face really tough competition with Philip Grubauer. You've got puck movement, but the need to maybe continue to round out your maturity at the NHL level with Joey Daccord.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And certainly I didn't take it as you. I mean, that's what Joey said right after the game. And he talked about situational awareness. And as you were mentioning that, I wanted to pull back from just talking about goaltending and thinking also about the Seattle Kraken when it comes to situational awareness. And I think when we talk about that, we talk about things like a bounce off the glass that is a little bit wonky. But I have been, I don't know if it's concerned, but I've definitely been keeping a keen eye out with my eye test on how the Seattle Kraken focus on situational awareness when it comes to something that we talked about last time you were on the show, which is when other teams are getting physical with them, how are they responding? And is their situational awareness maybe something that we want to keep in mind? We saw it. We were talking about Calgary coming right off that game. Obviously, we got a 5-minute power play off that hit from Jared McCann. Really gnarly stuff there. But when you look at the Seattle Kraken team, who I think you and I have agreed, not the most physical, Bash Brother type team out there, but can be susceptible to other teams, especially teams. This is the case with us in Vancouver last season, right? Teams that are really desperate for wins they're gonna muck it up, is what I said on an episode for fans yesterday. what would you say as someone who gets to see the team and you kind of are looking at how they're doing on special teams when it comes to that situational awareness and how the Seattle Kraken are evolving when it comes to protecting your teammate, but also knowing what the situation is and putting yourself in the best situation to win the task at hand?
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable question, and we could probably talk about it for hours, honestly. But, if we go to last night's game against Calgary, if you see the player, in this case, Mangiapane, get the 5-minute end the game, he's gone, that is going to hurt Calgary in terms of their lineup and effectiveness. Right. And then you go on the power play and you score. I think that you could say that's a response. That's a great response. However, I do think, when there's physicality rising in a game, I do think it's important to show that you're not going to be pushed around. Yeah. And I think this is a fine line in terms of hits versus cross checks versus penalties and being aware of your role on the team. We don't want Matty Beniers getting into a fight because we don't want him to get injured. And we also don't want him off the ice for the Kraken when he's taking a penalty, for example, similar to Jared McCann. You don't necessarily, when you're Ty Cartier in that Colorado game, points to him for going in and engaging to have some retribution for some physicality there. But he didn't necessarily maybe gauge up his opponent so much, going against a quality fighter on the Colorado side. So I do think that we don't want fights just for the sake of fights. And we don't want hits that take you out of the game. A lot of times, what I mean by that is in hockey, maybe even 5-10 years ago, you went for the hit. And if the hit does nothing to impact your ability to gain possession of the puck, let's reconsider the hit. But if you can make a hit to take possession of the puck, or if you can use your body in a more physical way in terms of positioning to block out an opponent and to say, hey, I'm not going to get pushed around when we're in a battle, for example, I think upping that a little bit is valuable. And I do think that there are times when there has been physicality from an opponent that we'd like to see a little bit more of honestly, just a true direct physical response from the Kraken.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's definitely where I land. Listeners, everydayers and OGers know, obviously I come from the women's game, the international game, so hits just to toss them out there makes absolutely no sense to me. I also went on a little bit of a mini rant about, so we're going to slap someone with a leather glove style, invite someone to a fight. That seems silly to me, but hockey's got its things like every other sport. But have a few other questions about the Kraken, and then we're going to dive into the data. And I did a little poll with some of our very loyal listeners. I should say not a poll. I did a call for questions. So there's one or two questions that I think are interesting that don't necessarily only talk about NHL Edge, but stats overall, and maybe even statistical bias, which I think is always very, very interesting. So we're going to get into that coming up on the show. As I mentioned at the top of the show, today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Now, I've talked about being on the road a lot, and although I do consume a lot of sports, I also like to do things like go to music shows or different art galleries, and yes, occasionally to a baseball game or two. And I have been able to do all of those things, music and baseball, through the Game Time app. I travel a lot. The last time I was in Seattle for training camp, I got to see one of my favorite bands, Little Dragon, and got some pretty sweet seats to see the M's play. They didn't win the game, but it was still a good time. And with the Game Time app, I can take a look at the seats that I'm thinking of purchasing. I put how many seats I'm looking for, and I get a snapshot of what those seats will look like. And that's how me and a good friend of mine were able to go see the M's in style, just as we always do. And one thing that I absolutely love about Game Time, not just the flash deals, the zone deals, the fact that you can take a look at your seats, is that there's also the Game Time guarantee. That means that you'll always have the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem Locked On NHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, fans, we are here with Alison Lukan, segment number 2. We talked a little bit and got Alison's thoughts on the Seattle Kraken this far throughout the season, just over a month into season 3. Talked about goaltending. We talked about physicality and a lot of other things. But now we're going to start getting into stats. And I, of course, want to ask you about NHL EDGE. And we've talked about this on the show before, but it seems like this is a bit of an expansion and a home for NHL stats. So if people want to dive into some of the categories, and we've talked about this on the show, things like skating distance, shot speed, shots on goal with, just diagrams so you can see, almost like heat map style, high danger, mid-range, long range, and then broken down also by forwards and defense. And then you also have, of course, goalie statistics. First question, you can take this wherever you want, Alison, but your initial thoughts and reactions to NHL EDGE.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's really important to acknowledge and appreciate that the NHL is putting this data out there. We, in my opinion, are the major sport that is the most behind in terms of what we share publicly. And, again, the teams have all of this information and have had it since tracking has started. But publicly, it's been under lock and key. And when it's public, this is when innovation happens. And this is when we as a hockey community get smarter if we're interested in learning about this stuff. And you don't have to be. You can just go enjoy your team and cheer for them. And that's amazing. So I appreciate that they're making the effort. That being said, I think that, for example, there's no glossary on the site. When you give people data, particularly new data to them, and a lot of this is new, you have to make sure that you give it with care and instruction so that it's not misused or misinterpreted. And I think that they've fallen down a little bit there. And I think we have to ask ourselves, why is this the data that they're sharing with us, these specific measures? And I think that these are not necessarily measures that tie to things that we know relate to evaluation of the game or players. So there's two audiences that we could be serving when we share data, right? We could be sharing it with an intention to educate, evaluate, which is great. That's where I live. But we could also be sharing it with the intention to perhaps reinforce prop bets or gambling and continue to grow revenue for a sport. Lots of sports do this. So that is not a judgmental statement. So I think that this is a lot of fun data, but I think we have to be really, really careful in assigning any kind of meaning, at least to this initial data set.
It's interesting to me that there's a team, the Seattle Kraken, that shows pretty high on skating distance, but maybe, and this, I don't know, is this a stretch? There's this word, effective. Is it effective skating? You're skating this far in a game, but you're not getting goals. Like, is that a reasonable way to look at the shots on goal or even goal data set and the skating distance data set that's offered through NHL EDGE?
Yeah, see, and that's, and I know, I don't mean this about your question there at all, but that is too big of a leap to take, right? Because all of these stats, when we talk about speed, so there's a bunch of stats where a bunch of math research has been done on them to prove that they are predictive, meaning they mean something. When we look at shot attempt volume, we know, because math has told us, that it is in fact true that it's much more likely that the team that shoots the puck more is going to win the game. So the philosophies and things I talk about are all predictive data. They tell us something. A lot of this NHL EDGE data is descriptive. It's just something that happens. We have no studies that tell us skating more or less is good or bad. I'll take, we were talking about speed already, but if you look at all NHL skaters, Jaden Schwartz right now ranks as one of the slowest skaters in the league. Has he been one of the Kraken's most effective players? 100%. Okay. So again, you see, these are not predictive stats, or at least we don't know that they are yet. So when I look at distance, I do know that players have said, going back to inception, that the systems that they play do require a lot more movement in how they play. So if we say they skate more, that tracks. But all it tells me is they skate a lot.
Right.
That's all it tells me.
Got it. I appreciate you breaking down the difference between predictive and descriptive, because again, without really maybe understanding to the level that you do, intuitively, I was like, I get that this is a data point and maybe it's helpful somewhere to someone for some reason, but I don't see it. I was like, because that's something that I would want to do. Again, effectiveness and efficiency is very interesting. And as someone who is analyzing a team, to be able to utilize a data set that helps me make sense of something, even if it's not just predictive, but I want to know, again, the why. Why is something happening? Why is, what can we look to? And I think it's fair to say that there's not always, I feel like math and data is one of those things where it's like having a poli-sci degree. You can do everything and nothing with it at the same time.
Exactly.
Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by FanDuel. Now, we know it is the NFL season, NHL season, obviously. And right now, new customers will get a $150 bonus bets package with any winning $5 money line bet. And if you've noticed on Locked On Kraken, we're starting to give you the money line odds with our pregame episodes. So again, right now that you'll get $150 if your team wins on a $5 money line bet. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get into the action. We've talked about the Bedard odds. We've talked about the future bets. We're talking about over, under, and money line when it comes to the graphics that we're using. So plenty of opportunity for you to show off your chops at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NHL and NFL season correctly. FanDuel, the official partner of the National Football League. But I mentioned that I wanted to ask you kind of how this data is being collected, because my understanding of hockey, kind of generally speaking, is that a lot of this, even at the highest level of the NHL, maybe I'd say as recent, air quotes, because, I think recency is all relative once you get to a certain age. But I'd say it sounds like within maybe like the last 10, 15 years, that there was still a lot of high-level hockey that was being tracked manually, meaning that there were people in an arena tracking data stats. And I think some of that is still being done while we've also relied on some technology. So can you just break that down for us a little bit? Like when we were talking about stats, or when we're starting to see the different animations now on broadcasts, how are we getting that information? Not we, but like how is the NHL getting that information?
Yeah, so let's start at the most basic level, which is the stuff that if you go to NHL.com and you pull up a game sheet, those are human beings sitting in the building, literally marking stuff down. So there was actually, and this is a story for another day, there was actually a season 4 or 5 years ago where it was the nerds that figured out that there was an issue with the tablets that the league was using to record shot locations, because we were looking at the shot maps and saying, that's not where the shots happened. And they had like a distillation error with what their tablet was doing. But 99.9% of what you're seeing, goals, assists, where the shot took place, was it a takeaway? Was it a giveaway? Was that a hit? Was it not a hit? All of that is tracked by humans in a building, tracking it down, and it is all having a degree of subjectivity to it. So that's why literally games in Madison Square Garden are always recording a higher number of hits, because the trackers in Madison Square Garden track more hits. It's just what they do. And it's like kind of a joke, but it's real. So that is the majority of data we're seeing. That's what that is.
Interesting. Okay.
Teams, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Teams have had access to tracking data for some time through private companies that they have paid that use technology that reads broadcasts and basically looks at, they have intelligence that says, I can identify that that's the puck. I can identify that that's this player by their number. I can identify where the stick is. And then they extrapolate a lot more meaningful data, but there's no subjectivity in that. That is automated tracking. What's happening with NHL EDGE is that on the ice, if you look on the player's back left shoulder, you will not see this if you buy a game-worn jersey because they take it off. There's a tiny little patch, and in that patch is a tracking chip. There are also tracking chips in the pucks, and that is where all of this data is coming from. And it's important to note, there's no tracking in sticks. So where is the stick when a player does something? We don't know. Which way is a player facing? We don't know because we only have them on one point. We don't even have both shoulders to know if they're pivoting, facing which direction. So all of this is coming from those tracking chips, and that's it.
Wow. Okay. You kind of hit on this, and the person who had the question, shout out to Brian, but was asking about if there's any arena bias. And it seems like there might be certain arenas and certain trackers, I guess, that they'll narrow in on a certain part of a game.
Right.
So that kind of hits that question. But and maybe I want to stay here because I just think hits for me it's not my jam.
Right.
But
Same.
Yeah, and so maybe we're not the ones to ask about this, but we still see that hits is I mean it's like the bread and butter, right, of data sets. When we see it's shots on goal, goals, hits. Like, I mean, obviously there are other things, but I mean, to see that hits is up there with like face-off percentage or power play, I just think that's so interesting. Do you have a take on why the collective hockey community still sees value added in recording hits and having them as a part of that kind of game synopsis?
Yeah, I don't know. And then quick side note on that, face-offs I tracked a bunch of games myself in terms of who gets possession after a face-off. Consider it just a puck battle. Right. And by my tracking, the league is wrong on face-off wins about 12% of the time. And Kraken have scored goals off the face-off where the stat says that the Kraken lost the face-off. So just face-off data is entirely flawed.
So you're saying that Dave Haxtell had a reason for wanting to defend the power play and specialty teams a little bit.
And listen, I know for a fact that he is thinking about face-offs the right way, which is, it's not just about that battle on the dot.
Right.
It is about who comes away with the puck and is able to do what they want with it. So you can lose that battle, but if your teammate and support comes in and retrieves the puck, or if they end up going into the corner and battling the opponent and coming away with the puck, and then you are able to execute what you want to, that's a win, even if you lost the face-off battle on the dot. So and Dave is thinking about it. I know this. We've chatted a little bit.
That's so interesting. It's like the hockey assists, but on the face-off. Like we want to think of it that way.
That's right. But back to hits. I don't know this for sure, but I do think it just ties back to the origins of this game and thinking that physicality was important. And again, I do believe that there can be a good hit, which is like we see in the women's game, which is I'm going to use my physicality to knock you off the puck, to gain possession of the puck. But I think that we have inflated the importance of that stat. I don't like it either.
Yeah, for sure. You know, who are some players that you think maybe could force the issue and force Ron's hand and let him know that they're ready to go?
Well, I mean, I think one of the most obvious ones is Riker Evans, right? Like we saw him stick around to the very, very end, and I was impressed. He was farther along than I expected him to be. And I think, training camp did exactly what it's supposed to do. It upped that competition. It showed the leaps and bounds he's taken in his game. And as those exhibition games go on, they get more and more competitive, not just within your team, but with your opponent. And I think we saw, and this is, again, not a slight on the player, we saw in that final game in Edmonton that maybe he's just not exactly there yet.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be one. Obviously, I think Shane is going to be one. I'd have to, I think there's a lot of guys right now who are in junior who I think are going to be close. But I think too, the other thing we have to think about is not just is the player ready, but is the seat open at the table. So, and I think this is the Shane Wright conversation is Shane might say, I can perform at the NHL level with his game. But if every player who's in the top 9 right now said, and I still have my role at the NHL level, you don't want Shane in a 4th line role. So
correct.
That's going to be part of it too, I think. And that's what dictates call-ups a lot of the time. People will say, well, why this player and why not this one? It's not always the very best player. It's the very best player to fill a role that's open.
But a few more questions that we got. I have said that I really liked the series that you've been doing, and folks want to know, are we getting some more Uncharted? The Philip Grubauer one, I think, is my favorite so far, but that was a really sweet one in so many just beautiful ways. But what's coming down the pike with that?
I would say, don't worry about it.
All right, there we go. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, sweetie. I love that. That's amazing. Okay, another question, very specific to Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and is perhaps going with the outdoor theme. Are there any suggestions that you have of lakes that might freeze over so he can get, his little feel of skating on an outdoor lake?
I mean, he might have to go up into the mountains, but I do know, I think it just was this past weekend, there is an outdoor tournament that happens north of Seattle, but he probably shouldn't skate on them during the season. We got to keep him nice and safe and healthy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's for sure. Well, Alison, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Locked on Kraken. I can't believe that I didn't go all in on the leadership side of things, but I think it's fascinating what's happening. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare is one of those players. We didn't get into Matty Beniers too much. I know there's been a lot of I'll say it this way. It feels like there's a lot of media pressure just noticing that he hasn't scored a goal, and we completely understand why that is. But I think there's a little more patience from people who see him playing day in and day out. I absolutely loved that Dave Haxtell defend. I said it on the podcast. I was like, he defended Matty. He's like, I ain't got to tell him nothing. I'm not worried about him. I was like, yes to that. And I think what we see is that Matty is impacting the game in other ways. And I think that's a really good sign because we don't want a one-trick pony. I think Matty B is really, I get the sense that he's showing maybe a little bit of his discipline, and that's different than the finesse side of the game, which makes me just adore his game even more. But that's just my take. We'll have to see how Matty B does, maybe have you back. But Alison, thank you so much for joining us, and safe travels with the team on the road trip.
Thank you. And of course, if we can always, you and I can talk for hours on a lot of things. So you know how to reach me if we want to come back together in this forum. I'm always happy to do it. I
appreciate that so very much. And make sure to listen to the other podcast, or I should say the podcast that Alison Lukan is a co-host of, Too Many Men. That's how I had to, we have got to like coax the details out of you. You don't want to let us know you're going to be between the benches so we can see it from the rooftops. So definitely take a listen to that with Sarah and Shayna, of course. But Alison Lukan, once again, please be safe out there. Continue doing a fantastic job. We're so spoiled to have you as a part of the greater Kraken family.
Well, I can say the exact same about you. You are so valuable, not just as an analyst, not just as part of the Kraken family, but as a part of this world. So thank you for doing all you do. And I'll come on anytime with you.
Sounds great. Until next time, then. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Alison Lukan. It was about a 40-minute conversation that I had with Alison. Locked On Kraken Insiders, you get the full thing, and hopefully you heard some of your questions, maybe remixed a little bit by me, but asked to Alison at the end. If you want to become a Locked On Kraken Insider, join us on a platform called Subtext. You can do it super simple and easy by texting 918-731-3154. Again, that's 918-731-3154. By being a Locked On Kraken Insider, you get the full unedited conversation with Alison Lukan, and that's the same for any conversations that I have. We have one coming up with Jessica Campbell. I've told you that we've got the Kansas City Mavericks that are going to be here in town in Tulsa, so I'll have some interviews from there and so much more. But for now, a reminder to be kind to yourself, be kind to one another, hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.